Hey everyone, welcome back to Apollo Art Analysis. This episode we're going to be checking out a piece by the established AI generative artist known as Proxima Centauri B. This episode we're going to be talking about roiling texture, we're going to talk about Gothic architecture, and we're also going to talk about the sacred symmetry of our natural world. So let's jump right into it. So whenever you first see this work of perspective, it's quite simple here. We're of course set in perfect center in this singular room, reading reminiscent of a church in some ways. Your first impression is likely quite ethereal as we feel this kind of ascendant light and these strange textures of flowers just kind of go across every part of this priceless piece. And so what you'll notice here, of course, we are placed in the perfect center here. Is, feels like everything revolves around this center, right? And our perspective is in perfect alignment with these kind of sacrosanct themes at hand here. And so in the realm of color, we note this kind of close analogous scheme. And what I mean by that, of course, you have this kind of blue-purple. You don't have very much green or any green for that matter. So that's what I mean by kind of a close analogous scheme. Blue and purple, of course, going to harmonize quite well. Very nice works. And of course, two main colors is always going to focus the viewer's attention. Impact of form here. Of course, the less colors you have, the more form is going to be impacted here. So we certainly see that symmetry here. And so in the realm of texture, one of the most defining elements of this piece, right? You look at all of these flowers, they have this incredibly kind of light and delicate, but roiling texture as well, right? The impact of this is absolutely hard to miss. It gives a sense of energy, but it also gives a sense of surrealism as well. It's hard to see flowers that kind of grow up there, but with that in mind, that could always point to kind of the divine themes at hand. Right. So what you'll notice here, of course, I said roiling in some ways, and that's what I mean here. You see constant curves, constant layers, and they just kind of pass off from one to another there. This really is probably the biggest source of visual energy within the work at hand, of course. Your visual experience is going to feel energized in some ways, right? It's going to feel energized a little bit by the stained glass, but it's also going to feel quite energized by all of this roiling texture, right? It's impossible to miss. And so what we see here, of course, are some influences of Gothic architecture. What I mean by that are going to be these pointed arches, right? I'm going to bring in a bit of reference here. We're going to see what we can learn real quick. Alright, so I brought a handful of references here to kind of look at the Gothic, see different variations within that, and even compare it to, say, the Romanesque. So we see this, for example. Of course, it kind of looks like a rounded arch, but all in all, we see it comes to a point, right? That's incredibly important. We see in the Romanesque compared to the Gothic, it is quite rounded, but in the Gothic, it goes to that point. So we see that, especially in these examples as well, quite strikingly. We see that in these examples as well, there's no doubt that we're seeing kind of a Gothic style here. And so what we see here, of course, the Gothic, we can't necessarily see this here. In a lot of Gothic architecture, a lot of the design is centered around allowing as much light in there as possible. And so we see this in some ways here. Of course, you have quite a lot of windows here, but the main thing that you're going to notice from Gothic architecture is going to be that pointed arch. So that's incredibly important when we're looking at the work before us. So after a short time at this work, it's like you'll notice this stained glass kind of far within the composition there. Stained glass is incredibly interesting, and although colored glass in general was kind of made since ancient times, it was only since about the around the 7th century that we really got what we see as modern stained glass. And so what you'll see here, of course, we talked a little bit about the Gothic wanting to incorporate a lot more light. And so what, of course, that goes hand in hand with stained glass, right? Whenever light goes through stained glass, it kind of invigorates or possesses it. We're going to take a quick look at some stained glass, see what we can learn here real quick. Alright, so I brought a picture in of some glass from one of the most beautiful churches in the world here. So what you'll see, of course, it's kind of hard to see within this original work here, but you do see a bit of that stained glass. So if you imagine that, of course, whenever the light hits it, it not only kind of puts a little bit of color on the wall, but it kind of invigorates the scene at hand, right? Colored glass is almost always used to show some type of narrative in one way or another, normally in the context, of course, biblical stories. So we see just the incredible, of course, beautiful impact of colored glass, especially when light hits that. So, noon at the very height of the day when the sun is shining directly down on it, it's going to feel absolutely ethereal. It's going to feel divine and sacred. So we certainly see the influence of that, especially in Proxima Centauri's work here. And so another thing you'll notice about this work is we'll see this kind of symmetrical form here, right? It's not perfectly symmetrical, it is kind of near symmetry. So we see that, of course, the kind of macro placement of the entire building is symmetrical in form, right? We're perfectly placed, like I said earlier, kind of in alignment with the sacrosanct themes at hand. And what you'll notice, of course, is this incredible sense of balance that results from a near symmetrical spatial composition. It's incredibly important, especially when we're going to talk about the sacred symmetry of our natural world. And so with that in mind, the natural world has a lot lot of different symmetry, whether it's leaves, pine cones, shells, everything from different plants, everything, all butterflies. There's so many different things you could point to. There's a lot of symmetry in our natural world. We're going to take a quick look at that real quick. All right, so I brought a bit of references here. You can kind of see the symmetry of our natural world, right? For example, you look at plants, you see this kind of radial symmetry from that center, right? If you look at butterflies, you see that kind of split symmetry across that vertical axis. Absolutely beautiful. Even snowflakes, we may not consider that exactly nature or kind of living or in that respect, but there is symmetry or a kind of divine order to that world as well. So what you'll see, what the artist is trying to work with is this symmetry or the sacred symmetry of our natural world, this kind of sense of harmony of how we are in alignment with that world as well. So we certainly see that, of course, so many different examples throughout the natural world. There's actually so many examples I couldn't bring them all in here, so absolutely important when we're looking at the work before us here. And so, of course, with symmetry, with the natural world, we were talking about order, we were talking about harmony and this kind of sense of balance to the work at hand, right? We certainly see that here. And with this in mind, a kind of sense of harmony, a sense of order and balance is really the foundation, or at least one of the main foundations to the divine beauty itself. So when we talk about beauty, when we talk about divinity or trying to reach our highest ideals, we're always trying to do so with this kind of harmony, this sense of balance and order, of course. So we certainly see that within the work before us here. His sense of symmetry is absolutely stunning. It's absolutely beautiful. We love that stained glass in the background, the influence of Gothic, so many different things you could truly point to here. There's no doubt that this feels sacred in so many different ways. So I really hope y'all enjoyed today. This is an AI generative work, so it was created in an AI art program. I believe that's actually going to be a custom trained model of stable diffusion. So if y'all want to kind of get into the AI generative world, I would suggest something like Midjourney, DALL-E 2, even kind of Disco Diffusion before you really push into these kind of custom models of stable diffusion. But I really hope y'all enjoyed today. If y'all did, go check out the original artist, Proxima Centauri B. Like I said, always doing some really good stuff in the AI generative medium. Really hope y'all enjoyed today. My name is Apollo. This was Apollo Art Analysis, and I'll see y'all on the next episode. We hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you'd like to support our work directly, please check out our Apollo community tokens. Apollo Art Exchange is an ecosystem of art appreciation which elevates artists each and every day. Thanks for listening.